at a magazine and you see that where, oh, okay, sounds great. Unfortunately, I have this meeting is being recorded in the center of my screen. Okay, I'm going to slide that over as far as I can. So to start all over, Nancy Ogden West, Director of Business Development and Education for Colorlab Cosmetics, and talking about structure, balance, and proportion. When you do makeup, most people do not have symmetry for their face. And so it's really training your eye to be able to see when you look at that client, and also looking at the breakdown of their face. Remember, when we're doing makeup, what we're working with is that client's bone structure. Now, we all extend and indent in the same areas, but of some more dramatic than others. And we have different shapes to our face, we have different proportion to our face, and our face is balanced differently. So let's go on to the next slide and talk about the bone structure. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to take your hands and let's go in and feel our bone structure. I know for me, the biggest thing when I started doing makeup and I became familiar with really, how did that happen? Became, familiar with looking at the bone structure, it makes a lot of difference on the placement of the product. Yes, we're placing them in same areas for some individuals, but the difference is how their face curves, moves, and again, the features and characteristics that they carry. So when we go to the very top of the hairline up here, we can feel that the forehead rounds out going this way, but it also rounds out going from the center down. Now, so this is an extended area on the face. When you get to the center of the face, and you're going to feel it a little bit more into the center, and then going out to about this area. This is a slight indentation right here in the center of the forehead. Then if you work your fingers down from the center of the forehead, you can feel where the brow bone extends out, rounds around, and then tucks in to the socket of the eye, right in through there. So again, everything you want to take in consideration. Now, when we go into the center of the forehead, when we bring our hands across, you feel how the forehead curves this way. When you get, it's almost to the brow area, almost to like the center of the brow or the center of the eye, you'll notice there's a plane change. Planes are the different movement of the structure of the face when you look at it. And you know what, let's go over to this next picture, because this picture right here shows you the plane changes on the face. So right here, it rounds. And then again, like I said, usually about the center of the iris, you feel the forehead start to angle back through this area. Now, right where the forehead ends, you feel the temples begin. And you notice that indentation into the temples. And then when you get to the bottom of the temple, look how the cheekbone, feel how the cheekbone kicks out right at that area. Okay, so when we take our fingers in this way, we've got the top of the cheekbone. Let your fingers round on the cheekbone here. Okay, you can see the curve and feel the curve of the bone. And then take your fingers and tuck them right underneath the bottom of the cheekbone. So when you're going in there and you want to create a more structured cheekbone to a client, you're going to shade right here at the bottom. If you push my finger in, you can, or push your finger in, you can feel where you're at the bottom of the cheekbone, and you feel the slight angle that that is at. Now, as you continue to walk your hands down your face, you get down by the ear area. And I want you to take and hook your thumb right behind your jawbone here. If you feel that, the jawbone comes straight down at this area, and then it kind of makes an L shape into the jaw where it's coming into the center of the face. Now, let's go back to the cheekbone area. You have the top of the cheekbone, you've got the side of the cheekbones, you've got the bottom of the cheekbones. I want you to think about the front. You can feel when you move out of the cheekbone area, it's softer. Going back, you feel the cheekbone and where it ends. So we have this roundness. Now your cheekbone is fuller right here in the front and then tapers as it goes back to the outside of the face area. Now let's go in and let's go down the center of the face at this point. When you go down your forehead, about right this area, just above of the brow, you feel where it starts to indent here. Then you have an indentation here in the center. You have extension, we're on the brow bone now, above the center of the eye, and then it starts to descend back at this point. If you look at that picture right up there, you can see where it says 5, 6, and 7. Okay, when we look at the eyes, there are 7 planes on the eye. So you can see 5, 6, and 7 set up here on the brow bone. The socket of the eye is the 4th plane of the lid, and then, of the eye, and then right across the lid area, right here at the inner corner. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone on silent. So there we go. Right here at the inner corner of the eye, right above the center of the iris, you can feel extension, and then you can feel the eye indents in the outside corner of the eye area. Now, you're seeing designs right now because we're doing some designs that have a lot of color into them. And you're seeing designs where they go in and they put one color where plane 1 is, another color where plane 2 is, another color where plane 3 is. Maybe they're going to go in and socket a different color with plane 4, okay? Or sometimes what they'll do is they'll take plane 4 and they'll move up into plane 5. They'll darken right up through here and then maybe leave 6 and 7 with some lightness through the area. So when you look at the eyes and dealing with the planes of the eyes, it kind of gives you a design direction at the same time. Now, when we go down to the nose area, we feel it indent. As we work our fingers down, the nose becomes a little fuller and a little wider as we go down. When you look at plane number 2 across the nose, that is the area of the nose that is the very top. And when you look at plane 6 on both sides of it, that's where it curves down into the side of the face right there. And then you have the very tip of the nose right here where it curves under, and then you have your nostril area down through here. So let's think about it. Let's say you're going in and you want to structure a nose a little bit, maybe you want to thin the nose. Then what you're going to do is you're going to shade, and I actually start my shader right up here in the socket of the eye and then bring it down onto the nose. The amount of lightness left here in the center is going to create the illusion of how wide or how more narrow that nose is going to appear. So if you've got a client who has more of a widened, flattened bridge on the top, that tells you you're going to be working that shader over that crest and bringing it down on the top of it, okay? Because you want to create more lightness down the center to thin the nose in that manner. If your client has got more of a widened nostril area, then instead of stopping that shader at your nostril line here, you're going to take it, you're going to bring it right down over the nostril area, and you want to make sure you go under the nostril area because that's an area of the nose that is seen. If you keep it light, you're going to extend that while you're indenting this area. Remember, light and dark, that's what it's all about. And to start achieving action on the face, you only have to have a 2-shade difference. Now, the lighter or the darker you go, the more action you will achieve at that point. So if we think of theatrical makeup is much stronger because it's for stage and it's designed to be able to see from a long distance to show that character. When we deal with regular street makeup, that's not what people are looking for. So when you are actually shading and highlighting and you're standing right there on top of the client and doing it, the best thing is if you have a mirror in front of you, because that way you can look into the mirror, and when you're a distance away, you can see the illusion being created at that point. Now, if somebody has a really thin nose, okay, and they want to create the width to it, they're going to highlight down the center and over the side crest of that. Remember, when you look at the nose, it's divided into different sections and different parts. I also have worked with a lot of people that have maybe a little bit wider nose, and you get down to the nostril area and it doesn't go out. It's basically the same width as the entire nose. In that situation, that's where I want to pop the nostril area out. So then with that client, I would go in and lighten underneath and right on the sides of the nostril area. Okay. So again, think about where you're putting your product and what you want to create with that illusion. Now, when we go below the lip, you have this indentation, which you see is plane number 2 right there below the lip. And then you have the high peaks at the top of the lip area and that descend down through. When you look at the lips also, you can see the lip is divided in half. Right here through that indentation and the deepest part of the lip that comes down here. You've got your one half, you've got your other half. Now, when you go down to the bottom lip, there's 3 parts below that. You've got the 2 outside parts that kind of come up and back. You've got the center part that extends out a little bit more. So we know when we want to go in and we want to create a little more fullness into the lip, we're going to go onto the outer perimeter with something that carries just a little bit more depth to it. And then right here in the center, we can do that on the top and the bottom. We're going to go in and we're going to put more lightness of color. Or a lot of times what we may do is we might go in and put a highlighter into those areas. Now, when we go below the bottom lip, you can see right below the bottom lip is plane number 1 that goes from there to this indentation line. And then right here where this indentation line is, it curves. So you've got 1 and you've got 2 on both sides. And then the front of this is your chin and then underneath your jawline at that point. So that's your bone structure. Regardless of what the shape of your face looks like, we all extend and indent in the same areas. Bone structure does not change. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is we start to look at the proportion of the face. When we look at the face, it is divided into equal thirds, from the top of the hairline to the bottom of the brow, from the bottom of the brow to the bottom of the nose, and from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. If we went in with a ruler and we measured out each one of those thirds, perfect proportion would be equal in each one of those sections. Some people are, a lot of people aren't. So when you look at me, I carry more height on the upper part. Let's see. I don't have my glasses on. I can't see what the numbers are. So starting right at the top, going right about to this area, I am about 2 3/4. When I go from the bottom of my brow to the bottom of my nose, at that point, I'm 2 1/2. And then when I go from the bottom of my nose to the bottom of my chin, at that point, I am almost 3. So I'm shortest in the center. I'm longer in the bottom, kind of medium in the very top. Right? Now, let's talk about correction. If you're working with a client and they are short up through this area, what you're going to do is you're going to go in with a lighter color and you're going to highlight the upper hairline area as it curves here and create the illusion of a little more length. Another thing that you can do also is you can put a little highlighter down the center, which is elongating that area just a little bit. What about the client who's long in that part of their face? It's just going to be the opposite. You're going to go in and shade right across the top of the hairline. Now, the next thing we want to look at in this section of the face also is, do they curve around? Okay. Or are they squared out? Do you want to create the illusion of more circular motion up into the forehead? In that situation, then what you're going to do, remember when we were up here and we were feeling the forehead and you got about right above the center of the brow, okay, or the iris, you could feel the plane change. right through this area, you're going to shade these side planes, and that's going to set that area of the face back. If you look at my forehead, I've got a shading right across the top of the hairline, and I have a little shading right through the side of the forehead area, okay, to create that roundness through there. When we go down to the center of the face, when you're working with a client that's short through this area, you want to make sure you leave enough lightness right below the eye and the top of the cheekbone, so it creates the illusion of width through there. If you take that blush and you pull it way up here, well, it does two things. If you started it down here, it's not going to throw your proportion off too much. But if you didn't start it down here and you went more with your placement up through this area of the face, what it's going to do is going to make the lower part of the face even appear longer, because you've started that color, and blush is always going to be darker than the depth of the skin, and pulled it up. So it's really important when you are doing your blush that you go in and you start that blush to keep the portion of the face equal right there at the bottom of the cheekbone. Now, when I remove this pen, look how it leaves a slight indentation. That's a guideline to go by. I mean, I remember when I really first became aware of proportion and bone, really got into bone structure and things like that, then all I wanted to do was touch faces all the time. I wanted to touch it and I wanted to visually look at it. I gotta be honest, that's what helped me train my eyes to see more. You know, our eyes are very compensating for us. When I was younger, I would see myself in a picture because we all have a high and low side. And I would always see this one side of my face, which is this side of my face, my right side was always higher than the other side of my face. Did I notice it when I looked in a mirror? No, because my eyes are very compensating and my eyes were not trained to look at a face that way. So we really have to train our eyes to focus in and look at every single section to be able to analyze it for our balance and our proportion when we're looking at things. Now, when we are going in, and maybe you've got a client that carries more length, and I don't really find too often that they carry more length through the center of their face. I usually find the top with this. Then with that, it's really important. You're still going to start your blush at the bottom of the cheekbone, but you're going to pull it up, and you might just pull it up a little bit higher, not leaving as much white space right below the eye and the top of the bone at that point. As we move down to the lower part of the face, we're talking about the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. Now, as I told you, I carry more length right through this section of my face. So if we want to shorten the lower part of the face, then you're going to go right here at the crest of the chin and pull the color right under, okay? What you've got to be careful of when you work with the lower part of the face, you're not only looking at proportionately, but you're also looking at it for a profile. And this is when we talk about an extended chin or a receded chin, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a little while. But when we're talking about proportion, where the face is longer down here, if you pull that shader up onto the front of the chin here, you're going to recess the chin. So think about right where it curves at the bottom of the chin into go underneath the neck area at this point. Now, if somebody was a little bit shorter through that area, I would be highlighting this just to create the illusion of a little bit more length. So this is looking at the proportion of the face when we look at it horizontally across. Next, when we look at the face vertically, the outer corners of your mouth should be right where the inner corners of the iris is. Now, remember, we're not equal from side to side. And I've got some pictures to show you symmetry in a little bit. But you may find, and pretty common, that one side of the mouth doesn't come out as far as the other. So you can either cut one side down just a little bit or extend that little corner out a little bit on the other side of that client's mouth. The next thing we look at is we're looking at the lower part of the face. This kind of falls in when we were dealing with proportion. From the bottom of the nose to the center of the mouth should be 1/3 the length as from the center of the mouth to the bottom of the chin. That really has to do a little bit more with lip play too. So in some situations, we may want to overdraw the top lip just a little bit on the client if they're carrying a little bit more length down through there. Okay. With that client, they might be a type of client that I have a very strong indentation below my nose to the top of my lip. Some people don't. You know, I'm not one of these people that's going to go in and shade that little indentation, because that's going to create too much of an extreme movement for me at that point. For the women that don't have that illusion, going in and taking a little shader, narrow right below the nose, and just fanning out into a little bit of a pyramid on the top is going to help create that illusion and also create more dimension onto the lips at the same time. From there, we're going to go into proportion. Okay, I'm going to cover the eyes all by themselves. When we look at the face from the side, the top lip, the bottom lip, and the chin should all extend equally when the client is sitting up straight and you are measuring from the center of the lips and the chin area. Now, I have a little cleft in the center of my chin. So for me, when we measure this, we just got to pull it out a little bit to see where the ends of the tip are at that point. This determines whether a chin is equal, whether it's receded, which means it doesn't come out as far, or whether it is extended. Now, when we are working with a client that has a receded chin, what we want to do is right here from this indentation line down to where the top of the crest is here, we want to lighten that, to pull that chin out to create the illusion of a little bit stronger chin. Now, a lot of times people who have a receded chin might carry a weak jawline at the same time. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later also. If the client, if you put that tool there and it kind of angles out like this, it tells you they have an extended chin. With that, you're going to go in and you're going to shade right there at the front of that indentation line down to the crest of the chin. You don't want to tuck it under because you want to shorten the lower part of the face. But I will tell you, in many situations, somebody who has an extended chin may also be carrying length on the lower part of their face also. So if you notice, I'm not really talking about face shape. In makeup, we don't really deal with face shape too much. I mean, that was back in the 60s, maybe, or more in the 70s. And we were trying to, especially in the 60s and earlier, we were trying to create these oval face shapes out of everybody. And back in those days, and I know those of you in school is way before your time to know, but back in those days, all of the models in the magazines had these big cheekbones. They had nice lips, not to the fullness that they have today. They had a strong lid, they had a deep socket, they had a high frontal bone area, and they were a little more oval in shape. Okay, and if they weren't, they were creating that illusion of being more oval shape. Well, today, when we look in our fashion magazines, there are many different shapes of models, isn't there, as far as face shape goes? You've got square, and square is really a big popular shape. You see a lot of square shapes out there, but our ideals of what is beautiful today change, okay? Back in the 60s, that was the ideal look. That's what every woman was striving for. Today, we strive more for individuality. We're not trying to look like everybody else that is around there. We want to be individuals. Now, if I am cutting somebody's hair, that's different. I'm going to deal with the shape of their face more. And a lot of times I don't necessarily deal with it as a particular shape as I look at it in two sections of the face with that. So think about makeup just a little bit different. Now, if a client sat down in my chair and I asked them to tell me a little bit about themselves and their feelings with makeup, a lot of them will go in and they'll talk about how they don't like or they don't like that, and instead of really talking about what their great features are. So I think it's really important for us as far as makeup artists to point those beautiful features out that they have. You know, because I've had people say to me, oh, I hate this feature. And I'm looking at them saying, why? That's a fabulous feature. You know, and my line is, I'm a professional. I know these things. So again, we don't see ourselves like other people see us at this point. So that's dealing with a receded chin or an extended chin. Now, these are profiles that you can see. And the first picture you see to the left is a straight profile. It's pretty well balanced. Forehead, nose, chin, equalization with what the face should look at. When you look at the picture to the right, that's considered a convex profile. This is a client who would have a receded chin. It sets back farther than the top lip and the bottom lip. Okay, so we're going top lip, bottom lip, and then chin, all extending at the same distance. And then the concave face, you know, that's kind of almost like a Reese Witherspoon, isn't it? She has a pointy chin, comes out a little bit more through this area. So that tells you a little bit about profiles when you're dealing with the profile of the face. Now, next, let's talk about symmetry. And this is a famous model, Christy Turlington, I think is her name. I mean, she doesn't model anymore, maybe every once in a while. But what I wanted to show you was, and really point out symmetry, because we are not equally balanced. And the older we get, the more out of proportion we become, okay? Remember, we start aging once we hit puberty. And as we age and our elastic fibers start to stretch, it starts to show a little bit more unevenness in our features and characteristics. So if you look at the original picture there to the left, okay? And she's gorgeous, right? Now, look at the center picture. That are the two left sides put together. Look at how she has a great arch into that brow. Look at how the eyes lift in the outer corner a little bit more. Look at how her nose looks a little wider up on the very top of it. And the nostril area comes out just a little bit wider at that point. Also, I want you to look at her lips. Look at how her lips are fuller all the way around, because on the left side of her face, it's a fuller side. And also look at the jawline. Look at how her jawline is more predominantly square on that side. Now let's go over to the right side. Also look at how her face, I'm sorry, on the left side, look at how her face looks wider. When you look at the symmetry when the right side is put together on those sides, look at the brow structure. What a difference the brow structure makes. It looks like it's almost dropping her eye in the outer corner, isn't it? And look at how the outer corner of her eyes drop down just a little bit compared to the other side. Look at how she still has some squareness of the jawline, but not as dominant as you see on the other side. And look at how she narrows down, and look at how her chin, look at the left side compared to the right side. Look at the difference in the width and the bottom of the chin down here. She looks a little square and flat when you look at left side together. She comes down and rounds out when you look at right side together. So we are not the same from side to side. And that means that sometimes you might do something just a little bit different on one side of the face than you do on the other side, just to create the illusion of balance. And that's what we're striving for when we're doing makeup, is creating that illusion of balance. So when you look at me and you look at my brow structure, really, when you look at it, it looks quite even, doesn't it? My brow structure is not even at all. My brows are filled in. So on this brow over here, because this is my high side, what I do is I go in and I fill it out more on the bottom, and I bring this brow down on this side to start balancing with this side. Now, when I fill this brow in, I don't fill underneath the brow. This brow is filled in and it's filled up onto the top. So what you do on one side of the face, you are not necessarily doing the same way on the other side of the face. What you do want to do is you want to copy to create the balance from side to side with that. Okay, now let's go to the next picture here. Okay, so here's somebody else. You look at the original picture here, And then let's go to both left sides. Okay, again, look at the arch, and you're always going to find this. Normally, one side of the face, the brow, has a stronger arch than the other side does. Oh, you know what I forgot to tell you? On this side that has the stronger arch on my brow, I actually take a couple of rows off of that. And then on this brow that's lower, I actually tweeze some of the hairs out from underneath it so I can lift that up at the same time. So a little bit of reshaping with the brow structure is going to make it easier for the client on a day-to-day basis to do those brows. Also, let's look at her eyes. Look at how her eyes are more open with the left sides together. Look at how her nose is just a little bit wider down, especially down through the tip of it. Okay, and look at how her lips look a little bit smaller. Isn't that interesting? When you go over to the right side, she doesn't have as much lift into the brows. The eyes don't look quite as open. Okay, her cheekbones are not quite as strong, right? And look at how much her lips are fuller. So again, we're not always copying and following exactly what they have on their face. I thought this guy was great also, because you can see, I mean, he doesn't look that off when you look at the original picture, but when you look at the picture in the center, look how much more his eyes are open and his brows are lifted, and look how more narrow his face looks. And look at the width of his nose, and look it over to the right side. You can see on the right side, brows don't have as much lift, the eyes don't appear as open, but they do appear longer, don't they? And then the face appears just a little bit wider and his lips appear a little bit bigger. Now, this one I put here because there wasn't a huge difference, but I put it here because I want you to look at her eyes and I want you to see the makeup that is on her eyes. So let's look at the original picture. Look at her left eye. Look at how the makeup on that eye is lifting and pulling the eye up. Look on the right eye, how she didn't pull the eye at the same angle. So it's really important when you are doing angled eyes and you're lifting those eyes up, that you get them even from side to side. So in some of those situations for me, I know when I'm working on a client, I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to stand right in front of them. I'm going to get an angle on one side. I'm going to get an angle on the other. I can look at it. I can see those angles are right. And then I'm going to build my color in from there. So look at the center picture. Look at how it's really lifting the eyes up there in the outer corner, and then look at the end picture. Look at how it's almost dragging the eye in the outside corner down. So things that you want to think about when you're working with those clients. Now, let's look at the proportion of the little eye area. And this is going from the lash line up to the brow. Your lid should be 1/3 the size as from the socket of your eye up to the brow. Okay. So when you look at my eyes, not bad, but I carry a pretty high frontal area right here in my eyes. And that's why when I'm doing my eye makeup, look at how I pull my shadows just a little bit higher right through there, because I have this large area. If I leave it without color or I leave it with lightness, it can do two things. It can make my eyes look smaller, and it can make this area appear puffy on my eye at the same time. So that just is your proportion. And there's really not a whole lot you can do with it, but your design you choose to do can create an illusion of having more width or bringing that frontal bone area down. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to start talking about characteristics of the eyes. To me, before I get ready to work on somebody's eyes, I've got this little mantra I go through. Are they close set, wide set? Are they equal? Because I'm analyzing for these characteristics in the very beginning. Are they deep set, extended, or are they equal? Is there a drop at the outer corner? Is there fullness in the frontal area? Do they have a prominent brow bone? Are they crepey? Do they have an extended lid? Do they have a receded lid? Bang, bang, bang. What characteristics do those eyes carry? Once you understand the characteristics and you can work with your light and dark theory, that shows you how to do correction. But remember, there's two ways to do makeup. One is for correction. One is to create a statement. So that doesn't mean we're always doing corrective work, but sometimes we do applications that are just creating a strong statement for that face. So we should be able to fit an imaginary third eye, the same length as our own eyes, right underneath there. Oh, here we go. So what I will do, and I actually usually do with this a pencil, I will take it, put it right here at the outer corner of the eye, take my finger where the end of the eye is, put it in between the eyes, close one eye like that, and see if it's close or extended. Now, what you will normally find with some people, and this is just general, it's not everybody. People who have a tendency to have close set eyes can have a tendency to have a narrow bridge right through that area. People who have a tendency to have wide set eyes sometimes can carry more width through the bridge right up to there. General rule, but not 100%. Right? So go in, just measure the length right underneath. Take like one of your pencils, put it underneath, go here, put it between the eyes down a little bit, close one eye and see if it ends on both sides. Now, what would we do for correction? For correction, for that client who is carrying the close set eyes, well, what's really important is we don't go in here and shadow that socket into the side of the nose. We want to go in here, we want to lighten right in here on the inside, very light in the very inner corner of the eye. That's going to create the illusion of more width through that area. If that client had wide set eyes, then we're going to go in and shade right through here. I go from the socket, bring it right in, and maybe I'm going to stop right here at the inner corner of the eye or down at the bottom of the eye. If I don't want to go in and thin the whole side of the nose down. All right, so that's just bringing the eyes from close set or wide set, either pulling them apart or helping to create the illusion of them coming close together. The next thing we do is we look at the eyes from the side. The brow bone, the center of the eyelid, and the cheekbone should all extend equally when you put a straight edge against it and you're measuring from the center of the eye. Why do we measure from the center of the eye? Because it is the most extended part of the eyelid. Okay, that's where the lid comes out and then it tucks in on the inner and the outer corner. If I can't put that tool down without creating pressure on the lid, they have an extended lid. And we know with a lid that comes out a little bit more, that by putting at least a medium to a darker color on it, it's going to soften that and set it back. Now, if I put this tool like this, and again, measuring from the center of the iris, and it did not extend out to touch that, I'm not talking the eyelashes, I'm talking the actual skin. That tells us they have a receded lid. And if we want to bring that out a little bit more, it would be putting some lightness into that area to bring it out. Colors can be up to you. Just think about, the depth of the color and what is it going to do when you place it into that area. Next, drop at the outer corner, also called the droopy eye. Never tell a client they have a droopy eye, okay? Women are sensitive creatures, are going to carry that around because you're a professional. So I just say drop at the outer corner of the eye. Now, what you will find with that is you will find that client that has that droopiness in the outside corner, usually from the arch of the eye, they have a tendency to angle down. They might even get a little fold right here at the outside corner of the eye. Excuse me. Now, that can become an acquired characteristic as we mature in age because gravity, our elastic fibers relaxing can have a tendency, well, we know it has a tendency to cause a sagginess or a dropping to the tissue on our face. And so when that drops, then what you might notice, this acquired condition as a woman matures in age, she might have that little line. The key is when you're dealing with a droppy eye, you want to create lift. Now, in most of your books or magazines, they'll say, about off center of the iris, create an angle and lift it up through there. But if you only lift from the top part of the eye and you don't take care of this little slant angle down here in the outer corner, it still creates a droopy effect to the eye. So in that situation, you're going to go in, you're going to widen your liner right here and pull it up. And then you can take your shadow out here. That's what's really going to lift the eyes when you're dealing with that type of eye characteristic. Next, fullness in the frontal area or puffy eyes, okay, where you've got that loose skin setting up through that area. that is another characteristic that can happen as we do mature in age. They may not have had that when they were younger, but as they've gotten older, it's gotten fleshier and a little puffier on them. When you work with that on a client, first of all, don't use luminescence on it. Okay, you want to use a matte color. Remember, even if it's a dark color, if it has shine and luminescence to it, it's going to reflect light and create extension. So use a matte color. I say more medium depth. Don't get too dark with that, just to soften it, set it back. Then you can always darken it up a little more on the outside part of the eye, if you want to, but keep it matte and keep it medium to darker. Okay. Next, when you've got a fullness, oh, that's the puffy eye, creepy eye, that happens as we mature in age. And you'll see it, they probably have a combination. They probably have some loose skin hanging up here. They have lines crisscrossing across the lid area, around the eyes, that. I don't try to get too intricate with that. I keep it simple. I might add just a little lightness. It really depends on the client and all the characteristics. Then I might have what I call a blushing tone. So it might be a mauve, it might be a peach, it might be a brown with a little bit of a rose tone, something like that, something that has a little bit of life and color. I don't go into taupes or flat browns because they can look too harsh on that client. Remember, this is normally a more mature client. And because you may not see a lid on their eye at all because the skin hangs over, think about doing a little bit of a color liner underneath the eye. It's a great way to draw attention and get a little kick into the eye area. Then you have your prominent brow bone. Usually that client that has a prominent brow bone, you'll notice they have a really deep socket in their eye. Sometimes they can have a receded lid or they may not. The key is with that client is don't go in and darken in their socket. It has an indentation anyway. If you want to soften that, do a little bit of a mid-tone color right there where the socket starts to curve up to the frontal bone area, because usually that client that has a prominent brow bone does not have a lot of space between the socket and the brow area. So this frontal area is normally pretty small. So just put a little bit color right on. If you stand to the side, you can see a curve, and just put it right where you see that little curve. Make sure you leave lightness below the brow to keep dimension into the eye area. So, and you're going to find sometimes you're going to work with people, they might be wide set with fullness in the frontal area and have a drop at the outer corner of their eye. The key is you look at every situation, okay? Wide set, I'm going to shade in here. Fullness in the frontal area, I'm going to put a medium depth matte tone through here. Drop at the outer corner of the eye. I want to make sure I create an angle from the bottom into the top that creates a lift into the eye. So most people don't have one characteristic. They might carry 2 or 3 different characteristics into their eyes. And that's why it's important to know and understand all of them. This talks about the planes of the eye. I did talk about this just a little bit earlier when you are looking at the eyes. And again, you can look at those planes of the eyes and look at some of the eye designs that are out that are doing those rainbow color collections, like JoJo Sweet, that was just on Dancing with the Stars. She loves to use all those colors. And if you look at a lot of the placement, it's using the planes of the eye to do that. Okay. So that is everything I wanted to share with you today about structure, balance, and proportion. Again, in doing makeup, it is one of the most important things that you should understand because it just gives total freedom. When you've got a young individual that comes and sits down, that's like a no-brainer. Let's be honest with it. And I love it when makeup artists are using all these young models to do models. Let's get somebody that has a little more mature, uneven features and characteristics and look at that and see what happens. So I want you to look at line, balance, structure, get that in, and that's only going to help you if you're going to be doing makeup. It's going to help you if you're going to be doing hair at the same time. So it was great being with you today. I wish you happy holidays. I wore my red plaid, feeling in the spirit right now, and hopefully I'll see you next year. Thank you, and thank you for Marie for inviting me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We enjoyed it, and I hope you have a happy holidays as well.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so students, please make sure if you've not done so yet, make sure that your attendance information is in the chat box. It needs to be your full name, full school name, and school location. And then educators, if you are with your student, I just need school name, location, and the word group. If you've already typed that information in, don't worry about it. I already have it. But for those of you who've not done so yet, please make sure that you get that in there before you log off. I'll stay on for just a couple more minutes to give you time to type that information into the chat box. Otherwise, thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.